Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 723, I believe it is, of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian and starting the show off with an itchy nose. Sorry. Well, I take care of that. Today, recording day is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, and it looks like it's going to be a nice day at the Beaver Lodge. Looking outside, I see some blue sky, a little wisp of cloud. I don't see the sunshine yet, but if I'm seeing blue sky, that means the sun is out. So it looks like it will be a lovely day here. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Just making sure everything's all right here. There we go. I was a little washed out. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health today? Mine, okay. Well, overall, I'm in a good mood. I'm not seeming to be able to catch up from having pulled an almost all-nighter on the day of the Alberta by-election. I've been this morning was one of the hardest mornings to actually wake up on time, as I've over the last 2 weeks. I'm how would you put it? I just woke up tired, very, very tired. And I would have very happily this morning pressed the snooze button and asked for another half hour to hour. So while I am happy to be here with you, DAMFAM, there's a part of me that would like to be snuggled up in bed still at the moment. I will not lie. But of course, as I always say, some time with the DAMFAM has now become an essential part of my daily breakfast. It makes my day so much better. So I obviously did get up. As you can see, I'm here to present a show to you. But yeah, this morning, I have to say, was indeed rough. And I did get to bed early, just still not being able to get back on regular rhythm. So I'm still working at it. That's why the shows have been starting at 7:15, more or less this week rather than 7. I've been needing the extra 15 minutes. It's been particularly difficult, but this morning, as what really was something else. I'm usually can wake up and sort of be snap right at it and just sort of bright-eyed, but I'm waking up more like a teenager the last week, where you sort of like you wake up and you got to get up, but you just want to stay there for a bit. And maybe sleep like another 3 hours. That's okay. I'll miss my morning classes. I'll catch up. Don't worry. Just let me sleep. Um, but yes, on the whole, doing well. Still counting the sleeps until my beaver sweetie is home. Only 5 more to go. Only 5 more to go. Oh God, I miss him so much. And then I get cuddles, and I get to hold him and kiss him and pet him and all that good stuff. I love him so much. So yes, but we did get to talk yesterday, which was lovely, and I got to play a little bit of tennis yesterday, which was lovely. My game is improving. I lost 8-5 yesterday, so I'm getting to 5. I had another match the other day where I was tied someone 6-6. So, 1 win, 1 tie, 3 losses. But typically getting to at least 3 games, 4 or 5 games. I played the one guy that I play at least once or twice a year who's really, really, really good to see how I stacked up. Last year was the first time I won a game off him. And I got close to winning 2 a few times, but I never could do that. This time I played him, and surprisingly, on 3 occasions had a chance to win 1 game, but then he just came from behind, and he's very, very stingy and greedy. He doesn't just let me have one because I've worked hard every now and then. Sometimes he's just mean. Nah, I love Bud. He's a great guy. But yeah, I wasn't able to close it off. There was twice I even had the lead. I was at 40 and had like 1 or 2 chances to try and close off the game to get the point, but he would not let me. So my recovery is coming very well. I mean, if I can, be in the lead twice to potentially get 1 point against that guy, that means I'm doing well. And the match I played yesterday, I was down 4-0 before I won my first game, and then it ended up 8-5. So I did terribly the first 4 games, and then in the next 9. Um, I had 1-5 and she had 1-4. So we were on serve from that point on. It just took me a little while to get warmed up or, or figure them out yesterday. So I'm happy with my play. Um, there is the competitive part of me would always like to win more. That's true. But this year being on the court is the win, given that my physiotherapist told me that the season was pretty much completely shot. So that I'm playing at all is pretty good. I'm not sure if I will get to the point at the end of the season that I started the season, that I'm able to move with that much agility and hit as hard as I was hitting and have good follow through. But uh, by God, I'm going to try. That's for sure. And like I said, just happy to be on the court and swinging and hitting stuff. And, like I said, practicing different things, practicing moving up to the net more rather than being stuck at the baseline and, my court positioning and angles and shorter shots and that type of stuff and practicing placement. And all of these things are going well. So when the rest of my game comes back, I might be able to do a little extra damage. So, yeah, like I said, just because I'm not able to play my best doesn't mean that I'm not able to continue developing skills in other areas of the game. That when, like I said, the rest of my game comes back to me when I put them together, might make it such that I I up my level a little bit. I go up a little level, which would be nice because that was the goal this season was to see, where I could take this baby after the improvement of last year. And then, well, that got in, that hit a speed bump, that plan did. All right, let's take a little look into the Magic Monitor and see who do we have with us today. We have Kit Elaine saying good morning. Kit playing with 3D also saying good morning to everyone. We have Kit Nona Carol wishing everyone good morning. And Kit Grace saying finally made it on time for this one. Good morning, everyone. I kind of helped with that. By being a little sleepy this morning. Ah, Sleepy Beaver. Sleepy Beaver definitely needs to become a moist beaver because when that happens, it gets a little dry here, as you heard yesterday. We have Kit Tabby G waving to us. Kit Lane says that it's a brisk morning where she is. Only 11 degrees Celsius, 10 with the wind chill. Wow. That's a drastic change from what we were experiencing a couple of weeks ago. But I'm personally, I'm not complaining because that was a little too hot for me. And this is the kind of weather that I like, particularly. I love, 16 to 22 sort of weather. I even like it a little cooler once the end of the summer. In the spring, it's a little tougher, but at the end of the summer, even 10, 11, like 8, 9, I like that. I like the briskness of it. But I'm a bit of a weird beaver. Yeah. We have Kit playing with 3D here. We have Kit Saucy with us, wishing us good morning. We have Kit Tom as well this morning. Hey, nice to see you today. Saying good morning, friends. We don't see Kit Tom every morning, so it's always an extra bonus and an extra treat when he is here. We have Kit Linda M saying good morning. A bit of fog off the river this morning where she is. Kit Ill today is with us. Hope that you are feeling well. And I'm sending you some very, very big hugs, saying good morning. The Breens are here. Hello, dear ones. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Uh, I'm glad to see you. Kit Uncover here, giving us the news and starting off with the dad joke. Why did the Beaver start a podcast? Because he had a lot of knowledge to share. Ba-dum bum dun dun dun. I like that one. I like that one. That's a good one. I like playing with words. We have Kit Hyper T 007 saying Bom dia gente. No, sorry, I missed that wrong. I got that wrong. Bom dia gente. There we go. I've been working on it. I've been working on it. Who else do we have? We have Kit Wishful here saying good morning and offering some much needed coffee to a lot of people. I'm going to assume that one of those cups are hot chocolate for me. That'll help me up. We have Kit Cassie here saying good morning, good people, and good morning to you, and good morning to the cowboy. Really, 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 really nice to have you joining with us today. Kit Linda M giving us an update from the World Women's Para Hockey. USA defeated Australia 8-0. Canada defeated Team World 10-0, so off to a great start for the two nations that everybody is expecting might end up in the final here of that, based on past performances and the strength of the national programs. Kit Moan is here. Good morning to you and good morning to a family, offering a cup of coffee and a wave to Kit Cassie. Kit Frank is here saying happy hump day. Indeed. Happy hump day. All the camels and dromedaries are did it say dromedaries? I'm just wondering if I just did a gaullisme, and because in French we said dromadaire, but I actually don't know the word in English. That's a weird thing about living in a majority English area, but going to a French school. The names of animals and trees you only know in French, not in English. I think it's a dromedary in English. I might be wrong there, but yes, happy hump day, everyone. I'm gonna have to look that up, see if I got that right. Kit Toronto Dan, Wagwan, he says, lovely to see you with us today, my friend. And I hope that everything is going fine in your world. We have Kit Kat W here saying, good morning, everyone, and good morning to you and all of yours. My dogs are Gother here. Hey, good morning. Always, yes, it's always weird to me when Labor Day isn't on the 1st. I understand that. Yeah, yeah, it is a little weird. Nice to see you. My dogs are Goth are not with us every morning as well, so it's always lovely to see them here. And that is everyone this morning, kids and cubs, that have slid in across the plate as the magic mirror, or magic monitor, I should say, comes to a close. I need like a little harp music. Ding. Okay, kids and cubs, we have a show for you. We're going to talk a little bit about economic data today. I've been looking around and seeing what's going on. Is there any need for us to start panicking yet? Or are things still relatively under control? Because a lot of people are wondering that. And of course, um, pardon me, for a business investment and all that kind of stuff. You want stability, you want predictability, you want to know what are the odds that more investment will keep coming, or is the mood towards jobs shrinking, all that kind of stuff, because people want to make plans, and as we say often on the show, and as Belle of the Ranch often reminds me, because I like to listen to her podcast, the economy cares about your feelings. So stuff like consumer confidence, that's why we measure it, right? So yeah, people want to know uh, what's coming down the pike so they can plan their spending, and then businesses as well want to do that. So we'll take a look at some economic data. My kids and dog. Thank you. My dogs are goth. It just gives me a good hey, Douglas. There we go. Dromedary is indeed a camel. Okay, I had it right. Okay, dromedary. Sometimes I don't remember. I say a word and then I turn around and it's like, whoa, is that actually a word? Or did I just terribly translate something in my mind? All right. So, kits and cups, let's take a look a little bit at some of that data here that I've got for you. Um, there was a interview I listened to recently with Francis Donald, who's the chief economist of the Royal Bank of Canada, and you know, um, just as our position with trade with the United States has evolved over the course of these, for lack of a better word, negotiations, if they are indeed negotiations. Because right now, if we've been looking at the dynamic, at least as it applies to other countries in the world, is Donald Trump wakes up one day, picks a number out of a hat, determines it's going to apply to your country, and you are informed of what level you are. Well, basically, you are informed of how hard the Americans plan to punch themselves in the face with regard to products coming from your country, and how high they are willing to tax their own citizens in order to obtain them. Uh, and and then he calls these deals, which they are not, because, as we've explained often on the show, a trade deal involves lots of negotiations, lots of pages, lots of I's being dotted, T's being crossed, a whole bunch of legalities, tons of legal architecture, resolution frameworks, all that kind of stuff. And these things that the United States is negotiating and calling deals do not have these, right? So we're being misled a little bit by all the press reporting calling these things deals. They're more like pronouncements than deals, to be totally honest. And a lot of nations in the world are at the point where they are tiring of this game, and they say, just give us a number now. Just give us a number. Let's hope it's the lowest number possible, and we'll just deal with it, because clearly this is not stopping, and clearly there's no way. Um, to get you to reverse yourself. Clearly, tariffs are here to stay. Clearly, sectoral tariffs seem to be here to stay, and there's not much budging on those at the moment. So people just say, you know what, rather than this back and forth, and every 2 weeks, you giving us another new number and saying, well, oh, hold on, well, maybe that number, maybe not that number. Let's just wait another 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks, and then they finally do come down in some form way different than what they were originally announced. When you put that all together, um, the game has changed on the ground for us, but the game has also changed for economists, because when all of this started, they were predicting much doom and gloom. They were predicting stuff like a recession of a year or greater would be coming, that unemployment in Canada would rise to over 10%. But these were based on scenarios that would assess um, all of Canada's exports to the United States being tariffed, because when it was being talked about at first, there wasn't any talk of exemptions for CUSMA compliant products. And you have to remember as well, our trade is in goods and services, and these, you're not necessarily importing services. So these tariffs are particularly on goods. So for economies that are a little more service heavy and that are exporting those to other nations, that is being treated a little differently at the moment, and you might end up being in a better position. So instead of 100% of our exports being tariffed, there's only about 8 or 9% estimated of our exports that are currently being tariffed. So that definitely changes the game from the early on predictions and explains why it is we didn't get that recession that would last at least a year. Yet, with this type of stuff, you always have to say yet because the mercurial mango from Mar-a-Lago can do something at any given moment that just completely switches the game. So, according to her, Frances Donald, chief economist at RBC, we are currently in the best of the possible scenarios that they had laid out at the beginning, with the possible exception of a situation that had no tariffs at all, which technically we've never even had ever in Canadian history. There's always been some level of tariff of some kind. It might have been very low, it might have been less than 3%, but overall, there was always some, and there were always some disputes. Like softwood lumber has been a dispute forever. It never ends. Well, it would have ended under Harper had he just let it, but of course he didn't, as we mentioned on the show, right? A couple of days before we got that final verdict from all the trade tribunals that we had been going to for years and years and years, he decided to sign the deal with the United States. Said, here are our new structures for our softwood lumber. And all the conservatives celebrated and how they patted themselves on the back until a few months later when the United States turned around, as everybody predicted, and said, wait a minute, this is not fair, or you're cheating here, and then started the process all over again. So, um, yeah, not sure again why Stephen Harper decided not to allow the legal precedent that was going to be in our favor to actually be set and stand, but he didn't. Negotiated a new deal under the wire, which created a new basis for disagreement, and the United States just walked through that door, and we're basically back to where we were prior to that day where we're going to get this final verdict that would have resolved this in perpetuity, assuming the Americans respected the verdict. That is. So there's always been some types of tariffs or countervailing or something going on. And also you have to remember, right? We were all trading. We had our trade deals, but we are all trading overall. If there was no trade deals according to the rules of the World Trade Organization, and you had designations as a um, preferred nations, and they would have lower tariffs. And Canada for the United States was, like super duper, major super duper preferred nation, but it still came with a little bit of tariffs. So we've never had exactly a tariff-free economy. But other than going back to the very, very, very low amount of tariff that we would have had prior to all of this happening, we are in the best possible of all the scenarios that the economists, at least at the RBC, had laid out at the beginning of this type of talk. But she says that there are two things that the numbers reveal. You have to go deeper than just the top line numbers in this case. The first thing is that there are sectors of the economy and regions of the country that are doing far worse and, of course, far better than others. So, for example, if we're looking at unemployment data, if you live in the city of Victoria or pretty much anywhere in British Columbia, the unemployment rate there is about 4%, which is very, very low. But if you live in Ontario and Quebec, you are among the hardest hit. Ontario's financial watchdog says that U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods are starting to take a bite out of the province's employment rates, particularly hitting jobs in the manufacturing sector and in the city of Windsor in particular. I know we have some kids watching us here from Windsor. I believe Linda M, if I'm not mistaken. There may be a few more, but if you live in Windsor, the unemployment rate there has reached 11.2%. So 4 in BC, 11.2% in Windsor. And that's the highest rate among all Canadian census metropolitan areas. Statistics Canada divides certain parts of Canada consider when they do the employment rate, does it for the entire census metropolitan area. So if you ever see in employment data the abbreviation CMA, that's what it means. They look at 32, I think, big regions like that and measure them for comparison data. So Windsor has, out of all of the ones that they measure, has the highest unemployment rate, 11.2%. And this is according to the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario's um, most recent economic monitor that's measuring the period from January to June 2025, which was just released on August 21st. This economic monitor shows that Ontario lost 38,000 jobs during the second quarter of 2025 from April to June, and that this is the first quarter that experienced job losses since the third quarter of 2022 in Ontario. Ontario's unemployment rate, however, has been consistently rising in recent years, with this being the ninth consecutive quarter to see the unemployment rate rise, and it reached 7.8%. So again, it's nearly double the unemployment rate in British Columbia. So that's why I'm saying some regions are being hit particularly hard while others are doing much better. 7.8% is the highest unemployment rate reported in Ontario since 2012. So even like pre-pandemic, if you exclude the pandemic period, that is right. According to the report, Canada-wide, the unemployment rate is 6.9%. So Ontario's unemployment rate is raising the national average here rather than lowering it. Um, and this is again according to Statistics Canada most recent labor force survey. In a report issued on August 21st, Statistics Canada said the number of Canadians receiving regular employment insurance benefits has also risen. In June, there were 541,430 people collecting EI across the country, which is an increase of 18,020, or 3.4%, compared to May. The latest figure is also an increase of 12.8% compared to June 2024, when 479,800 people were collecting regular EI benefits. Quote, provincially, the increase in number of recipients with regular EI benefits in June was concentrated in Quebec and Ontario, according to Stats Canada's report. The report said that the two provinces accounted for 84.3% of the monthly national increase in EI benefits. In Ontario, the number of regular EI benefits claimants increased by 7,900, or 4.5%, and in Quebec, it increased by 7,300, or 6.1%, Quebec being particularly affected by the tariffs on aluminium, for example. The largest increases in EI claimants were among people who last worked in sales and service and then in manufacturing and utilities. Quote, in June, the number of beneficiaries receiving regular EI benefits increased the most among recipients who were last employed in sales and service occupations, up 4,800, or 5.4%, marking the fifth consecutive monthly increase for this professional category, the StatCan report said. Quote, among those who last work in manufacturing and utilities, the number of recipients with regular EI benefits increased by 4,300, up 11%, mostly in Ontario. Francis Donald states that in her assessment, likely the worst of the job hits has taken place, with the national employment rate, as we mentioned, being at 6.9%, compared to initial fears of going over 10%, and later revised estimates claiming that it would hit 7.1. That did not happen. So, and if the worst is behind us, assuming that we are not going to have another major curveball thrown our way by the United States, we handled the initial shock pretty well. If that's the case, it still doesn't mean that there are not Canadians who are having a tougher go of it as a result. Not at all. There definitely are, and we should keep our eyes out for them. And if we have people like that in our circle, we should definitely have much care and compassion, because there's a lot of things being thrown their way that they did not ask for and did nothing to earn. It's just happening to them and being imposed on them. The second thing that we need to look to when we're looking at this data. So the first one is to, just because if you happen to be living in Alberta and things are going well there, don't assume that that's the same thing from coast to coast to coast, because it isn't. There are huge regional disparities, and there are huge disparities in certain sectors of the economy versus others. But the second thing that people need to look at is that we are also um, going through one of the sharpest collapses of consumer confidence ever recorded in our data, despite actual spending being flat. It's not in the overall numbers, they're not showing great retraction in economic spending, consumer spending, despite a collapse of consumer confidence. But there again, you have to look deeper into the numbers because there's an increasingly large divergence over the past 2 or 3 years uh, of what the economy is like for lower to middle income Canadians and higher income Canadians. Lower and middle income Canadians have no more savings really from the pandemic era. And they are really feeling the food and the rent inflation because, as we've mentioned when we went over the inflation data, even though the main number, the headline numbers coming in at 1.7%, food inflation is nearly double that at 3.3%, and housing inflation is higher as well. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, unfortunately. Even though it was cooling a little bit in most parts, it's still higher than core inflation. And those are two things that everybody needs, right? If we remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a pyramid, if you look at it in um, in a visual way, that has five uh, tiers to it. I will show it to you, kids and cubs, in case this is a theory that you're not uh, familiar with. Um, but this I think he was a psychologist. I might be psychologist or sociologist, but okay. Well, it's a theory of psychology, so I'm going to guess he's a psychologist here. Uh, it's a motivational theory in psychology that has a five-tier model of needs, often depicted as hierarchical pyramid. And from the bottom up, bottom of the pyramid are the things that you need the most, because and you technically can't satisfy what's at the higher level that you need without first taking care of these. So here, if you're looking at it, you got your physiological needs that are at the bottom of the pyramid: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. And that's where we're talking about these core inflation numbers when it talks about food and rent. This is right down here in the bottom. And then if you go up the pyramid, you have your safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. One level up is your needs for love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. One higher up, your needs for self-esteem, respect, well, for esteem, period, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And at the top, self-actualization, when you're at the period, you're at the peak, all your basic and fundamental needs are met, and now you are blossoming and blooming and then being the best that you absolutely can be. And that's called self-actualization. So when we're talking about low and middle income Canadians, we're talking about people that are really focused on these bottom tiers: physiological needs and safety needs. Very, very focused on that. And the rate of inflation for everything that you need physiologically is way higher at the moment than the base of uh, the headline number is being advertised. So lower and middle income Canadians are experiencing the economy that, if you're looking at the top line numbers, seems to be particularly resistant and resilient and pushing, uh, um, not pushing back, um, showing signs of being, like I said, resilient or stronger, and that we might not even get technically a recession based on what the United States has done so far. We might be able to navigate and avoid that. But just because as a nation we're able to do that, it doesn't mean that everybody in the nation is doing well. And in this case, as we mentioned, lower and middle income Canadians, because they have no more savings left from the pandemic and they are feeling food and rent inflation, which is higher than core, more than other groups, uh, they are spending less. even though overall spending is flat, and in a manner that is statistically significant and very noticeable. Whereas higher income Canadians who spend a larger share of the overall money that is being spent and therefore make the numbers look good. They raise up the average, but even them are spending a little less in certain areas, or they're downgrading where it is that they go, if you wanted to call it that. Um, so, for example, fast food restaurants, which usually make a lot of money off lower and middle income Canadians, are noticing that lower and middle income Canadians are going there a lot less, but some higher income Canadians are starting to go there a little more frequently than they did. So overall, their numbers are still looking pretty okay, but who's coming in is changing. So like I said, this economy is being experienced differently depending where you are uh, on the financial scale. Um, Another place that so we're going to have to start to look at that data not only according to the top line numbers, but we have to look at regions. So looking at Ontario versus Alberta, for example, looking at renters versus homeowners, for example, when we're talking about credit card debt and whatnot. Um, Renters are having more difficulty and are missing more payments than homeowners are. But even if you're looking among homeowners who are younger uh, are missing payments more often than homeowners who are older and have had time to accumulate a little wealth here. So the main question that we have to keep on asking those who are presenting the data is the data being segmented correctly to get the real story on the ground? Again, renters versus owners, younger owners versus older owners, people in places that are not particularly affected employment wise by steel and aluminium tariffs, auto sector tariffs, or lumber tariffs, or countervailing duties in that particular case, versus regions that are not. Because the numbers will be wildly different. And if the government is going to be establishing programs of some kind to address this, well, they need to tailor them to the regions that need them if they are going to be particularly effective. And again, one of the criticisms that I have of this current government at the moment is that while they have been announcing financial supports to sectors, we've seen one, I think, for steel and aluminum, and I think we've seen one for lumber, if I'm not mistaken, not too long ago. Um, what is not being announced supports for workers, uh, with the possible exception of funds for retraining or retooling programs, but direct supports to workers that have been affected by these tariffs, people that have already lost their jobs or have lost hours, other than changes that were made very early on uh, in Prime Minister Carney's leadership of the Liberal Party with regards to making EI more accessible. There hasn't been any sort of CERB type program or monthly top up or something of the sort announced for actual workers in these industries who've been affected. And some of them have been affected for some time. Now, some of this is going to require legislation, of course, which can't be done until the House sits. So it's kind of an empty criticism at the moment, but we're also just not hearing any talk of it. When House resumes, we will be tabling this type of bill to increase supports to, Canadians that have been effective, Canadians that have sacrificed for the betterment of the economy, whatever the flowery language you want to put around that. There's been no rhetoric of this kind from the Carney government at the moment. And it's a part that is missing because it's very well and good to do what you need to do to reorient the economy and make sure that businesses are whole and that certain trade routes can be rerouted as in given how nimble our economy is. Fortunately, we've done that work. And that stuff is important. It's very important. And yes, by strengthening the industries and making sure that trade is able to be diverted and that we onshore more things and that type of stuff, yes, you are defending Canadian jobs and creating employment opportunities or preserving them, all that kind of stuff, all very well and good. Yes, but you need to also be announcing things for people. I think she's an economist, Armenia I always mess up her last name when I'm trying to remember it um, on my own. Armenia Yelnizyan, um, who I always love listening to because she brings great perspective. Um, but yes, she's an economist. Um, she is and a progressive economist as well. She does a lot of work with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, for example. Um, I- when she's looking at this, you know, she's when she's talking about unemployment, she makes sure that she spends some time talking about youth unemployment in particular, because the rate in Canada is very, very high, um, extremely high for the moment. And if you've been listening to the news at all, um, Generation Z has been facing the worst uh, youth unemployment rate uh, probably since 1983, when it reached 19.2%. And that was when we had those really, really high interest rates back in the time. But according to the Canadian press, um, a new report says current youth unemployment rate is at levels typically only seen during recessions, even as other age groups face a more resilient labor market. CIBC analyst Andrew Grantham says the rise in unemployment among those aged 15 to 24 has gone above and beyond what the current economic backdrop would suggest. He says the youth jobless rate typically rises about 4 percentage points during periods of weakness, which is higher than the 2 percentage point gain among prime age workers when the economy pulls back. But since 2022, the youth unemployment rate has risen more than average with a 5.5 percentage point gain. That's at the same time core aged workers have seen lower than usual rise in joblessness. Grantham suspects the rise of artificial intelligence is a factor on the demand side because the jobs typically undertaken by young people are also the ones at most risk from technological changes. The other factor going on, according to Armenia Yelnizyan, is also because of this. Um, Workers that are a little older, so let's say if we're looking here 15 to 24, 25 to 29-year olds, uh, are holding a lot of those entry level jobs still because they're having trouble finding their next job, which would free up that level of employment for those looking for their first job, right? So that's another thing that is going on. People that are older are in jobs that would 10 or 12 years ago, if you were looking at them, see, you would say that they're too old for, right? 'Cause or this phenomenon that we're looking at youth called failure to launch, where kids are still at home at 25, 26, 27, sometimes even their early 30s, and the jobs are not there because these jobs are already filled by people who want to eat and want to have a roof over their head still, and are accepting lower pay jobs or jobs that do not have that do not require the skill set, a higher skill set that they might possess because somebody else is also in that job, right? Uh, the jobs are not freeing up higher up along the chain for people to find their next jobs. So the jobs at the bottom of the chain are being occupied for longer by people who you expect would have moved on by now. So that's another reality that is going on when you're looking at the data in a at a more doing a deeper dive into what the data is saying rather than just looking at the top line numbers. Grantham also says that the jobless trend is due in part to an uptick in non-permanent residents from 2022 to 2024, adding to the labor force. But he notes that the higher supply of workers doesn't account for weakness across the entire market. Quote, with population growth decelerating rapidly recently, in large part because of a curbing of student numbers, that supply factor is unlikely to explain the renewed weakening in youth employment witnessed this year, Grantham wrote in his analysis published Tuesday. Statistics Canada reported youth unemployment in July rose to 14.6%, the highest rate since September 2010. Grantham said early data points to the role of AI and other labor substituting technologies that will likely disproportionately affect younger Canadians looking for jobs. For example, the report suggested the retail sector is partly responsible for high unemployment as retailers increasingly roll out self checkouts while business and support services are increasingly turning to AI. But the factors contributing to the weakening job market aren't going to last forever, Grantham said. Quote, population growth, particularly among non-permanent residents, is already slowing, meaning less incremental supply needing to be absorbed into the labor market. Other periods of technical advancement that led to upheaval in the job market, including the rise of the personal computer and the internet, had those losses offset in the long term with new jobs in other areas, he said. The report didn't indicate how soon the trend might begin to shift, however. So yes, youth unemployment is another element that we really need to be looking at when we are looking at this data. So yes, um, are we segmenting data correctly to get the real story on the ground? Where are the measures and direct supports for workers other than funds for retraining? These are other questions. Are we comparing regions? Are we comparing economic sectors? All of these things are questions that we need to be asking as citizens when we are consuming the news and we are looking at the higher level data. So, yes, but what's underneath that? And you also have to look at the data from both perspectives, right? To the people that are trying to make it, Canada more resilient than believed. Okay, yeah, that's good news. That's a feel good story. But it's not. That's not true for everyone. If you want the full story, and or if you're on the other side of the spectrum, everything's terrible and getting worse. Well, not for everyone, right? And not everywhere, and not every sector. So, less and less nowadays, the overall headline is going to be the full story. So we just need to be a little more attuned to that when we are looking at our economic data. From the U.S. economy side, Ernie Tedeschi, who's the director of economics at the Budget Lab at Yale University, and also a former chief economist at the White House Council of Economic Advisors during the Biden administration, has mentioned that some of the things that we've been talking about the show, for example, consumer spending having front run the tariffs at the end of last year and then declined in the first quarter. So, which created in the United States a situation that if you were looking at Q1 numbers, quarter one numbers for this year, there was a decline of 0.5 in the annualized rate of GDP growth. Unemployment rate in the United States rose slightly to 4.2, which is just slightly below full employment. So their situation on the employment is different than ours, right? We're at 6.9, they're at 4.2. So with them, for example, when Donald Trump talks about onshoring jobs into the United States and building factories, the question for them is, yeah, but who's going to build them? Who's going to work them? Because everybody's pretty much has a job. Whereas in Canada, we do have more human capital that can be put to work, if you want to use that term, than is the case in the United States. And the United States also wants to reduce immigration. It's like, well, if you're already at near full employment and you want to expand economic activity, but you don't want to bring in more bodies to do that, you're not going to get expanded economic activity. Or it's going to be limited. It's not going to be all it could be. In the United States, the chaotic rollout of these tariffs and this tariff policy has made it such that businesses and consumers don't know when is the right time to buy. So, we had people stocking up on inventories before they thought that the tariffs were going to come. And then when they heard that more tariffs were going to come still, then a lot of people made their big purchases like cars and stuff like that a little earlier so that they wouldn't get dinged. So nobody knows exactly when to buy, when to invest, when not to buy, when to hold off. And it makes these numbers swing greatly. Um, Year to date in the United States, according to, again, the budget lab at Yale University, the United States will have been brought in about $88 billion in tariff revenue imposed in 2025. However, despite that number, the US fiscal trajectory is still considered unsustainable over the long run, given that the United States wants to increase investment in capital projects like we're doing, right? They want to um, uh, what Mark Carney says here, we're going to spend less so that we can invest more. They want to do the invest more part, but the United States doesn't want to do the spend less part all that well because that's a big tax cut, multi-trillion dollar tax cut to the very, very, very rich. So basically, the one big beautiful bill for billionaires. Because it ain't beautiful for anyone else. Uh, well, when you put that together, that's taken money out of the economy. In fact, according to projection data in the United States, the 10-year lost revenue projections from the tax cut, which are estimated at about $4.5 trillion, nearly match the 10-year estimated revenue gain from the tariffs, which are in at 4 trillion. So it's still a loss, but they're pretty much covering. So this is another thing that gives us the idea that the tariffs are here to stay. Because if Trump wants to use tariffs to pay for his big, beautiful tax cut, and that tax cut's going to take $4.5 trillion out of the US economy over the next 10 years, then he's got to find a way to bring in as close to $4.5 trillion back into the treasury over that 10 years. And that is literally the import fees, the tariffs, again, which are a tax on the US consumer. So when we are talking about the fact that the economy is now moving from trickle down to trickle up, where we are taking from the poorest and funding the richest. This is exactly what it is. And because they're called tariffs and not called import taxes or consumption taxes or value added taxes or good and services tax, well, Republican Americans who are very used to voting against their own best interests think that this is a wonderful and fantastic thing, that they are being gouged. Right? I think we presented some data yesterday that was showing that it was already taking $1,600 to $2,000 out of each individual household. It seems that there's other data that indicates once everything is fully in place and fully active, that number could rise to as close to $10,000 per household. That you're paying more for things so that billionaires can have another tax cut. At least that's what's going on in the United States. So that's a lot of money coming out of the economy. That's a lot of decreased economic activity that is happening unless all that onshoring that Donald Trump wants to occur takes place. And they are able to modify the immigration numbers without taking another backlash hit in order to accomplish that. That doesn't look like It doesn't look like the stage is set for that to happen in the United States in a manner that is smooth and unchaotic, at least. With regard to GDP, the Canadian GDP expanded by 0.5% from Q4 of last year to Q1 of this year, maintaining the revised 0.5 growth rate from the earlier period ahead of expectations. So our first quarter numbers came in better than expected. While the figures were better than those flagged by the Bank of Canada, the concentration of growth in net foreign demand and inventory accumulation was supported by firms front-running tariffs. So we did that in Canada as well from the US instead of core economic strength. The exports, and which is probably one of the reasons for which the Bank of Canada did lower interest rates at that moment, because I'm not exactly sure how it is that we're going to read that. Well, didn't lower them after the first quarter, because I think March was their last rate cut. Um, the exports of goods and services expanded by 1.6%, while imports rose by a softer 1.1%. In the meantime, business non-farm inventories were accumulated at a sharp pace after withdrawals in the end of last year, adding $8.7 billion to the GDP. Still, economic uncertainty drove household consumption to slow, 0.3% versus 1.2% in Q4 of 2024, while government expenditure contracted for the first time in 1 year data. So, Government of Canada expenditures contracted 0.8% last year versus an increase of 2.3. So it seems that even that part of the equation was being worked on at the time, though it didn't get a lot of fanfare. On an annualized basis, the Canadian GDP expanded by 2.2% in the first quarter, firmly above expectations of 1.7%. And that is, of course, according to Statistics Canada. Now we are getting ready for some Q2 data, the second quarter, which is April, May, and June. So we will soon be getting numbers on overall GDP growth from that, and I think that's coming out this week in 2 days on the 29th. So we'll see where that stands at that point. But based on the monthly numbers that had come out prior to that, um, it would seem that Canada's real GDP had contracted by 0.1% in both April and May of this year, but there were signs of a small rebound in June 25, with an advanced estimate suggesting a zero point 0.1 increase in real GDP for the month. The contractions were primarily driven by weakness in goods producing sectors, while the June rebound was supported by a notable increase in retail sales, stronger wholesale sales, and a rise in hours worked. With the contractions in April and May and a projected rebound in June, Canada's real GDP for the second quarter as a whole is tracking at an approximate zero point 0.1 annualized increase versus a zero point 0.5 annualized increase in the first quarter. So that would indicate that the economy is indeed slowing down, but still not contracting. If that June estimate materializes as expected and makes it so that the number for the entire quarter is a zero point 0.1 annualized increase. Now, I have a graph that I want to show you here, kits and cubs, that will give you an idea of what's been happening here in Canada. So hopefully that graph is up for you to see. Yep, there. Okay, there is the window. So I'll put it here. So this is the graphic I wanted to show you here. So this is the first quarter of 2025. You can see that GDP increased 0.5%. Last quarter of 2024, GDP increased 0.5%. The previous quarter of that increased 0.6, previous quarter 0.6, the previous quarter 0.5. So the last 5 quarters that have been recorded have been remarkably consistent, keeping our annual number. So when we talk about the annualized number of 2.2 after the first quarter is of 2025, this 0 0.5 here would have been dropped from the number, and this 0 0.5 would have been added to make it such. So if in the next round we're dropping the 0 0.6 and we come up at 0 0.1, that annualized rate that's now indicates 2.2 will come down to 1.7. And that was what was expected to happen in the first quarter of 2025 and didn't happen when people were surprised by how strong the number was ultimately. So that's based on the data that I'm seeing here is what I expect to see in that report if that advanced estimate does indeed hold. And then you can see if you look on this graph before that, as we're getting in and out of COVID, you can see how things swung greatly. We've gone from times where we've had, 0.6 annualized growth to minus 0.1, back to a full 1% growth, and then 0.2 down, and then down to 0.2, and then negative 0.1. So we had been swinging a lot, and then, had some remarkable, like I said, stability over the last 5 quarters. uh, which again, um, you can say thank you, Trudeau, right, for having helped that happen. But of course, never ask a conservative that because you won't get that. So yeah, that's the economic data as things sit at the moment as we await those numbers on the 29th to confirm what GDP growth has been for the second quarter. Um, Hopefully, it will be a slightly positive number, only because if you get a slightly negative number, two consecutive quarters of negative growth is technically what's needed for a declaration of a recession. And if the number is negative, you certainly will have Pierre Poilievre saying, "Oh my God, we're in a recession already," or stuff like that, rather than saying, only going, "Oh, we're halfway there." Instead. Um, and again, the zero point 0.1, right? If we were contracting zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2, um, wouldn't necessarily be running around with my hair on fire as a result of that. But yes, it would definitely be better for the whole national conscience and our eardrums if the number came in ahead zero point 0.1 than below zero point 0.1 in order to deny PP that opportunity. Now, again, zero point 0.1 isn't the economy's on fire. Woohoo! Let's spend money on frivolous things. Um, and there's plenty of there'll be plenty of uh, fodder for criticism by Pierre Poilievre if that would happen. But still, uh, him not being able to say, "Oh my God, we're halfway to a recession," uh, would definitely be a relief. So I'm praying for the number to come in just slightly higher, uh, if only to save us from mass stupidity. Yeah, I said it. Mass stupidity. All right, kids and cubs. Um, Yesterday we talked about the prime minister. Actually, let's go see if there's anything here um, in the chat from the kids and cubs here about this. So we have a Kit T. Wigmore here saying the scale is a bit alarming, at least for me. Growth or negative growth measured in decimals. Should I be concerned or just be glad it seems stable? Yeah. Well, you know what? At this moment of chaos, um, stable is good. Stable is very good. Um, Now, stable on the upside is much better than stable on the downside. But even on the downside, stable is good because you can plan for stable. You can put some strategies in place and see how it acts. Chaos is very, very, very difficult to navigate. Extremely. So, yeah, I would say in this particular case, be glad for the stability and hope that your stability is on the upside because being able to plan um, when you're in a storm is very, very difficult. Absolutely difficult. Um, Kit Kat W going, I really don't care what PP has to say. I can understand that. Because I can understand that. There are many days I don't want to care what PP has to say, but I have to. Um, but yes, a lot of it is mindless and not accurate and um, made uh, to inflame and misrepresent and all that kind of stuff. So I can understand. I can understand being tired of that. Uh, I do not fault you. Trust me. Kit Elaine, Windsor's unemployment rate is not over 11%. It's only around 10%. Okay. Um, so, the number I have is from the Fiscal Accountability Office of Ontario, and they're reporting 11.2 at the moment. So I can only bring you the best data that I have at the moment. Kit Saucy here says you cannot control chaos; it can only be managed. Yes. Kit Milan saying here, when looking at numbers like these, it's important to view it in cycles, not the instant. Also, yes, very, very indeed important. Thank you so much, Kids and Cubs here. Kitavi G, dreams are free. Enjoy the luxury of your imagination. I should have saved that for my words of wisdom today. I love it. Okay. So, Kids and Cubs, um, as we have been talking about here on the show over the past few days, um, the prime minister is in Europe on a big mission to shore up economic ties, talk defense, sign some deals, talk energy security. And yesterday, we had, well, over the past few days, we talked about him making a surprise trip to Ukraine for Ukraine Independence Day, going to Kyiv and delivering. I've seen portions, I haven't watched it all yet, but seen portions of the speech that he delivered there on Ukraine Independence Day. And I just cannot imagine Pierre Polyev doing the same thing. I just cannot imagine him going to Ukraine undercover, showing up there, standing side by side against Zelensky and saying words on behalf of all of Canada and even potentially by extension all people around the world that believe that you just don't go march into another country and say, yeah, that's mine now, thank you. um and have the gravitas and have the credibility that Mr. Carney has, particularly since Pierre tried to sabotage us having a free trade deal with Ukraine, right? um I just can't see it. I can't see it. So it was a moment that made me proud when I saw clips of that, what the prime minister was saying, pledging our permanent, pretty much, support for Ukraine for as long as it takes. So that was a moment of pride. And then the prime minister went off to Poland, where he met with the president and the prime minister. Um, you know, signed documents that would make it such that uh, trade between the two nations continues to increase. We talked about there's some deals, we don't have much details on them, having to do with small nuclear reactors and other things. Of course, paid a visit to the troops there, working with Operation Unifier. And overall, seemed to have been a very, very good meeting, and with the ambassador of Poland to Canada stating on Power and Politics how it is that Canada and Poland have are very like-minded on many issues, and therefore are looking very much forward to cooperating. The next stop was in Germany, Kits and Cubs, where yesterday we ended the show in the Easter egg, reading about deeper energy ties with Germany through critical minerals partnerships, which is very good. Because a lot of the market is dominated by China and Russia, Canada does want to get more into the game. And Germany, in particular, which is the largest economy in Europe, would be more than happy for that to be the case because they are looking to shore up their uh, their sources for this, as well as liquefied natural gas and hydrogen energy as well. So there's lots of opportunities between Canada and Germany to be able to work together. And then, of course, we talked about the Prime Minister mentioning plans to formally announce new investments in port infrastructure over the next few weeks, pointing to port upgrades in Montreal and Churchill, Manitoba, that will help with exports of energy and mineral products. And it seems that in uh, Germany, they are working on their ports as well. in order to be able to receive such supplies when that is the case. So we are starting to get some hints. We also talked about the prime minister sort of musing aloud about uh, there actually being a case for potential exports of liquefied natural gas from eastern seaports in Canada, um, given what the United States is doing on trade, and Germany mentioning, or I think it's Poland, sorry, the ambassador of Poland to Canada mentioning in his interview in Power and Politics that Europe already is buying Canadian LNG. It's just buying LNG that's being shipped through the United States and buying it at much higher cost from the United States, given the tariffs on goods, which would definitely be avoidable if we could get it to an export terminal on the East Coast and ship it ourselves. So, which would mean that there is a burgeoning market uh, for liquefied natural gas in Europe that didn't exist a couple of years ago when the United States was not selling it with these tariffs on top of it. So, yeah. Um, Now, of course, the when we're talking about tariffs in this particular case, uh, the tariffs are on imports. But if they are taking some Canadian oil and then reselling it, my guess is that when they are importing, not Canadian oil, I mean liquefied natural gas, that the tariff is applying at that point, um, if there is a tariff. Uh, but whatever it is, whether it's a tariff or whether it's just sheer greed that the United States is just charging a higher price point because it can, and it is the only source. Um, Germany is seeming to indicate without saying it outright that if you, and Poland as well, if you had it, we would certainly be happy uh, to be talking business with you. So, um, will we hear? Uh, I'm pretty sure, like as they are telegraphing that we will hear a lot about port investment in the first round of projects. Will we hear anything about preparatory work for a liquefied natural gas pipeline across Quebec into the Atlantic provinces? Probably going to St. John's, I would suspect in this case. Um, and sorry, not St. John's, St. John. Ugh, Canada. St. John and St. John's, two teams once called Rough Riders, just spelled differently. Why do you confuse the children so? See, now I'm not. How you know you're Canadian? You say St. John or St. John's confidently the first time, and then the more you talk about it, the more you doubt. So you have to go and check. Yes, and I was right. St. John, New Brunswick, St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. So I did say it wrong the first time, and I was correct in correcting myself. So, but yes, the port of St. John in New Brunswick would probably be the one there because I believe that there is already some infrastructure with regard to oil. So my guess is that similar, um, not for doing what needs to be done to liquefy to natural gas to be able to get it on board a ship, but in similar infrastructure to be able to have a ship that's big enough for that type of shipment to pull in and pull out, and dock and all that kind of stuff is probably already in place or can be more easily expanded there than perhaps other spots. So yeah, we'll definitely be getting some announcements about those, as about ports for sure, and it will be interesting to see if there's any stuff for groundwork or preparatory work or whatnot for a pipeline coming east that then might be announced, an LNG pipeline coming east that might be announced more formally at a later date. But based on the discussions, it seems that if we're looking through a crystal ball, that these are certain things that we could indeed look at and seeing coming uh, down the pipe. So let's see what else do we. Oh, yeah. Okay. Just sorry, there was something in the chat that caught my eye here, and I got distracted for a second. So with all of that, yesterday there was discussion on power and politics with the ambassador of Germany to Canada, um, Matthias Lutinger, I think his name is, if I'm kind of making it, Lutenberg. Um, and I want to show it to you again because um, I like it when ambassadors from other nations come onto our political shows because sometimes we get some insights and perspective that we don't necessarily get when we're reading the news in print in any form or when we're watching segments. There's all the body language and the type of language used in diplomacy, which is usually a little more flowery and ornate. Um, the degrees to which that happens, or the degrees to which there is some bluntness, as blunt as people are in diplomacy, because usually it's like I said, a iron fist and a velvet glove type dealings. Uh, but you can notice there are tones and there are inflections and particular choices of words that, if you're paying attention, make you go, "Ooh, they really bent that," or "Yeah, they don't much care for that person," or "This initiative is never going to happen." Um, so I like looking at these. It gets that perspective, and the diplomatic corps doesn't get enough profile, to be totally honest, because they're the ones that are frequently in the room when these things are being discussed, with the possible exception of Ambassador Fuckface, who admitted the other time when he said, "Well, why did Mexico get an exemption? Why did we get 35%?" And he said, "Well, it must be something about the energy in the room." And says, "Oh, well, what happened?" "Well, I'm not in the room when it happens." "Oh, okay. Well, who is in the room? The Canadian ambassador to the United States is in the room when these things happen, but the American ambassador to Canada apparently is not." That should give you an idea about how much we should pay attention to Ambassador Fuckface. They won't even let him in the room. uh, but I have a feeling that Mr. Matthias Lutenberg was in the room when things were being discussed before he came on the show and delivered his assessment of what was going on. So, kits and cubs, if you will, a little bit of attention for the ambassador, Matthias Lutenberg. And I'm just going to make sure that everything here is set up for you to be able to see. And I had not done that. I was about to press play before that happened. But now things, and let's go. About 5 minutes of this, might have a stop or two along the way, but listen very carefully to what he has to say, because there's some little nuggets in there that are very good.
For more on this, Matthias Lutenberg is Germany's ambassador to Canada, and he joins me now live in studio. Nice to see you, Ambassador. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So Canada needs some allies right now as we're grappling with this situation with the United States and the trade war. It seems like things are pretty positive between Canada and Germany right now. How would you describe our relations after the two leaders met today?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think things are indeed very positive. It was a fabulous visit from my point of view. First of all, it's great to see the Prime Minister in Europe, but also in Germany in particular. I think Germany is the biggest economy in Europe. It's certainly a very good partner to Canada and vice versa. And we have so much in common. We share so many values, but we also have a joint interest in the diversification of our trade routes, for example. And so the focus was very much on these issues today.
Right. As you know, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there was no business case to sell liquefied natural gas to Europe. We are hearing a very different message from Prime Minister Carney today. He said there's amazing potential opportunities if we open a new port in Churchill, Manitoba. We know that Germany is buying millions of tons of LNG from the United States and Qatar, not Canada, as a result of really inaction by past governments on developing LNG. Would Germany be a customer for our liquefied natural gas if we did get our act together, if you will, and start producing some of this and sending it over to Europe?
Well, ultimately, that's certainly up to the companies in Germany, the buyers, to decide if they want to purchase LNG from Canada. But I would see a huge potential for a business case, at least. And I see and I hear from the conversation that we are having with German companies that they do care about LNG. And we, as the government, certainly want to pave the way for any sort of imports, because, as we said in the beginning, the diversification, especially in LNG imports, is of relevance to us as well. We have done our homework. We're working on the relevant import infrastructure and our ports. So we're getting ready for everything, especially also with a view to hydrogen on the longer run. But LNG imports we are doing already, so we are there. And I hope that Canada would also fulfill this step. And what I heard today in the press conference of the Prime Minister with the Chancellor in Berlin was very encouraging in this regard.
Yeah, they also talked about critical minerals. There seems to be some sort of deal struck today. We don't really have a lot of details as to what exactly the two countries have agreed to do. Can you kind of shed some light on that for me, for our audience? What have they agreed to do on critical minerals? Is there some sort of timelines for the projects that are under discussion?
Well, I would describe the document which was signed today by Ministers Hodgson and Reiche, the German Minister of Economy, as a framework document which would help us as a joint declaration of intent, help us to promote the exports of critical minerals and to jointly seek for diversification of our routes, but also to work jointly on research, for example, to work jointly on all sorts of critical minerals related activities. And it's not yet with a timeline, and it's still not very concrete in terms of single projects which we wanted to undertake, but it opens the door, and we do have some support schemes both in Germany and in Canada, like a raw materials fund in Germany, which we will use for the benefit of our cooperation in critical minerals.
Canada and Germany did about $30 billion in two-way trade last year, so a sizable amount, as you say. We are large trading partners. I think you're our sixth largest, so certainly very consequential. How much higher can we go from 30 billion? What's a reasonable expectation in terms of trade between our two countries as we move forward?
Well, actually, I think there's still room for improvement, certainly so, and critical minerals could be a cornerstone in this improvement, but also our cooperation in other areas. We have a lot of investments already. We have around 500 German companies which are present here in Canada, and I think that with the development south of our border to the United States, that certainly other countries, other businesses are also looking at Canada more favorably than ever before. So I see it's well possible that we are seeing another increase in this trade volume. Yeah.
Is Canada looking better now, given what's happening in the United States?
Well, you never looked bad, so therefore I think, yeah, at least it's becoming more and more visible for Germans, for European companies, because of what happened in terms of tariffs. But we always looked at Canada very favorably because they are a close ally at the G7, NATO ally, and therefore we always had an open eye on Canada for sure.
Let's talk about Ukraine. How does Germany feel about the prospect of a peace deal? It seemed like things were moving in the right direction last week after that summit at the White House. But
my desire to stop the interview at that point did not work. But there we go. So that was the ambassador of Germany to Canada, Matthias Luttenberg. And as you will notice there in some of the answers, right, when asking about the openness to LNG, well, that would depend on the enterprises and all that kind of stuff and all the caveats. But when you end up with the answer at the end, it's like, yeah, we'd be open to that. We really would. Yeah, we'd like to talk we'd like to talk about that more. That would be a good deal. That would work for us. And there at the end, right? Well, Canada's never looked bad. Right? It's like, is Canada starting to look good now? Canada's never looked bad, but with things that are changing, we've been noticing how lovely your eyes are lately. I keep on thinking, having this image of Canada being in a conscious decoupling mode with the United States, hanging out at the singles bar, legs freshly shaven. looking around, seeing if anybody noticed us as we flip our hair. And finding out that we still got it. Germany coming up and going, hey, Canada, haven't seen you here for a while. Have I told you how pretty your eyes are? Well, I know you haven't actually, but please go on. Buy me a drink. So yeah, um, definitely looking at some deals with ports, critical minerals, LNG, hydrogen energy, all that type of stuff. Germany is very interested in, and I'm sure the more we get to talking, the more we will find other areas where we could help each other out eventually or down the line. Perhaps some agricultural products. You never know, right? There might be other markets there for our things. So, and other goods that we produce here. So, yeah, very interesting to see that development here. And like I said, those types of conversations are is why I particularly like interviews with ambassadors in particular here. According to the Canadian press here, it says that Canada has signed a critical minerals partnership with Germany that encourages the joint public financing of natural resources projects as Ottawa works to boost development and exports to Europe. Uh, primary Prime Minister Carney said that for too long, key Canadian minerals such as nickel and cobalt have gone underdeveloped, while China and Russia dominated the global critical minerals market. Quote, Canada can play a role in accelerating that diversification for Germany and for Europe. These issues are only going to become more important. There's likely to be a fourfold increase in the demand for critical minerals and minerals over the course of the next decade. So if we're doing the skate where the puck is going, analogy there. You definitely want to be prepared for that. They're setting themselves up for. With regard to the announcement about ports, also according to the Canadian press, Prime Minister Mark Carney says expansions to ports in Montreal, Manitoba could be among the first projects fast-tracked under his government's new major projects bill. Carney says the government will make an announcement about new port infrastructure in the next 2 weeks. The port's comments came as Carney was in Germany and then Latvia today, which is yesterday, expanding trade ties in Europe with new agreements on energy and critical minerals, projects that will likely require upgrading ports to ship those products to Europe. Carney specifically identified the Contrecoeur expansion of the Port of Montreal as something that might be one of the first projects approved under his government's major projects bill. Oh yeah, I forgot about ports in Montreal. I just bypassed Quebec completely. We have the St. Lawrence Seaway, and I went right to St. John. But yeah, true. Improvements to the Port of Montreal as well could definitely be counted in that. Carney says the government will make an announcement about new port infrastructure in the next 2 weeks. And then, yes, I mentioned that already. The government passed Bill C5 in just 2 weeks in June, allowing it to quickly approve major projects it considers to be in the national interest. He also cited what he described as effectively a new port in Churchill, Manitoba, so it can ship liquefied natural gas. So those two details were launched yesterday. And then yesterday, in addition to his time in Russia, the Prime Minister continued onwards to Latvia, went to Riga, and this again, according to the Canadian press. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced that Canada will keep troops in Latvia through 2029 as part of a mission to deter Russian aggression in Europe that has given Ottawa an outsized role in the transatlantic alliance. Quote, we must defer and fortify, and that is the way we can provide true reassurance, Carney said at Tuesday's news conference in Riga, flanked by Latvian Prime Minister Ivika Selina. Carney's office says that there are now 2,000 Canadian Armed Force troops in Latvia as part of Operation Reassurance, which is Canada's largest overseas mission. Canadian troops have been there since 2017 to strengthen the defense of Europe's eastern flank and to deter Russia from invading Baltic countries through what many call a tripwire. The current authority for the mission was slated to end in March 2026, but Carney says he plans to extend that by another 3 years. Quote, "We will, in the process, increase the brigade's capabilities here in Latvia, reinforce our collective defense, strengthen our cooperative security, and keep the NATO presence strong. Canada is coordinating the role of soldiers from roughly 10 countries in Latvia to shore up the country's defenses and to train Latvian soldiers," according to the Carleton University professor Stephen Seidman. Quote, "We're punching above our weight," he said in an interview. "We're basically being treated by the rest of NATO as equal to the UK and Germany, who are coordinating similar multinational brigades in Estonia and Lithuania, respectively. Ottawa aims to have a whole full cadre of 2,200 persistently deployed Canadian troops in Latvia sometime in 2026 and has been building new infrastructure at the Adazi base near Riga in the past 2 years to make up for overcrowding. Canada occasionally has the full presence of 2,200 troops for specific exercises," Seidman said. He said Carney's visit is likely meant, quote, "to help educate Canadians about this major commitment and to put a face on the boost to defense spending that is coming at the expense of other services for Canadians." Quote, "He might be going there to show Canada where the money is going and why the money is necessary," he said. Seidman added that the mission is particularly complex as France would likely have led uh, the mission, and Canada is instead running a mission with a smaller contingent from many countries, which requires more work to coordinate. Quote, "We are doing a whole lot that doesn't necessarily get recognized back in Canada," he said. The mission started after Russia's 2014 invasion of Ukraine and annexation of Crimea and has taken on increased importance since Moscow's February 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Earlier Tuesday, Carney said in Berlin that Russian President Vladimir Putin is afraid to sit down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after U.S. President Donald Trump said the two should talk directly on how to end the war. Quote, "We see President Putin put in conditions and stalling and being afraid of having this meeting," Carney said. Marcus Kolga, a senior fellow with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, said Canada's mission in Latvia is a major contribution. Quote, "It's probably one of the most important international missions that we've been engaged in since the liberation of the Netherlands in World War II," he said. "It allows them to go on living their lives normally, even though that threat is right at their doorstep," he said, adding that this applies to Latvians as well as neighboring Estonians and Lithuanians. Quote, "It demonstrates that Canada is active and it won't be pushed around by Vladimir Putin." Global Affairs Canada profile on Latvia says both countries, quote, "share a close relationship grounded in shared fundamental values, such as support for democracy, human rights, and the rules-based international order." Latvia has deep scars over violence meted out on the population both during the Nazi occupation and during Latvia's time as part of the Soviet Union. So, yes, big announcements being made. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that will conclude the Prime Minister's European mission. I think he was there for a total of 5 days in order to make all these visits and negotiate all these deals, the terms of which we don't all fully know yet. And of course, to take time to visit troops both in Poland on participating in Operation Unifier, and here in Latvia, participating in Operation Reassurance. And of course, as we mentioned, reaffirming our commitment to Operation Reassurance and extending our leadership there for another 3 years. All right. So that is the main stuff I believe that I have for you from these two main stories. I'm just going to take a look here to see if I have any additional data in my notes that I did not go into today, because sometimes I move from story to story, and skip over my notes because sometimes I remember a lot of them off the top of my head and I'm able to throw them in. But I also want to make sure that I get absolutely everything in. And yes, there we go. I absolutely did get all my notes in. I remembered everything that I had written down. Yay, lucky me. All right. Then with the other story that we were talking about yesterday that we have to follow up on is Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc's meeting in the United States and how that went, because he was meeting with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And this, according to Mike Lecouteur and Tommy Ibrahimpour TV. CTV has that Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc met with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick Tuesday morning, with LeBlanc's office describing the meeting as constructive and lengthy, which is a quote. And here we have the tweet saying, "Happy to be back in Washington, D.C. for a productive meeting with Howard Lutnick and his senior team this morning," featuring a picture of them standing next to each other in front of a fireplace here. They said the meeting was scheduled for 1 hour, but lasted more than 90 minutes. Kirsten Hillman, Canadian ambassador to the U.S., was also at the meeting, but there were two other people at the meeting that made ears prick up here in Canada, and those were the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Marc-André Blanchard, and the Clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Sabia. Both high-level appointments, and both were also present yesterday. So that's interesting when we talked about talks intensifying. This might be another example of how this is manifesting itself on the ground. As mentioned previously on the show, the talks come just after Carney announced that Canada would drop some of its counter tariffs on American goods, part of a prolonged trade war that has seen Washington impose a 35% tariff on Canadian exports not covered by the country's free trade deal. Both Canada and the U.S. still have tariffs in place for steel, aluminum, copper, and autos. Carney has said the goal is to, quote, intensify talks with U.S. President Donald Trump on a broader economic and security deal, that he received assurances from Trump that scrapping some countermeasures will kickstart those negotiations. Former U.S. Ambassador to Canada Gordon Griffin told CTV News Channel in an interview Tuesday that Canada's move to lift some retaliatory tariffs opened the door for renewed negotiations. Quote, "I assume that this meeting is the beginning of those negotiations, and I'm optimistic that something material can be a result in the foreseeable future," he said. "The template for a deal is pretty straightforward and obvious. Canada, I think, has the opportunity to strike a deal that may be much better than the rest of the world." Griffin also praised Hillman's presence at the talks, noting that her background as an experienced and successful trade lawyer is an extreme asset for Canada. LeBlanc has made several trips to Washington in recent months, including one in late July. He said at the time that the government's priority was to get the best deal for Canada rather than one by the predetermined August 1st deadline. And here at Kids and Cubs, I have a little segment of an interview with the Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, where he's talking about the thing I mentioned yesterday about that didn't get a lot of press in Canada, but the president having signed a executive order further committing the United States to respecting the terms of the CUSMA deal. So I will present this to you here, Kids and Cubs, and so that you can hear it directly from the minister, what that was said, because apparently this happened a few weeks ago, and like I said, hearing this in the interview is the only place I had heard about this.
Canada has... Hi, are you? Good, how are you? I'm well,
Oops, I think, yeah, the playback speed was a little too quick there, so let's fix that.
Thank you. Canada has essentially taken a key component that it saw originally as leverage against the U.S. today, taking it off the table. So what cards does Canada have left in these negotiations?
Canada has a lot of cards, Karina, to use your analogy, in our conversations with the Americans. We're their most important customer in critical industries. We have opportunities where we can invest in projects as Canadians and Americans that will be critical to economic growth in both countries. So we have a lot of resources and a lot of trading opportunities that the Americans are very interested in. As you said in your opening, these counter tariffs were put in February. The Americans subsequently exempted CUSMA compliant goods. It wasn't on the very first day they announced their tariffs. A couple of days later, I remember a conversation I had with Secretary Lutnick. He told me that they would be announcing that CUSMA compliant imports into the United States would be exempted from from these tariffs. Canada hadn't taken that step. And the United States, a few weeks ago, for the first time, publicly in an official presidential executive order, committed to respecting the CUSMA compliant exemption, which puts Canada, as the Prime Minister said, in the best position of any other country right now in terms of a trading relationship with the United States. It's not where we want to be. It's not where we were 8 months ago, but we still have a significant marginal advantage. And maintaining tariffs that were not respecting the CUSMA exemption that the Americans had put in place some months ago, in our view, was unwise.
Why not increase the sectoral tariffs, though? If, as the Prime Minister said, this is about matching, about being on the same playing field, but we don't have the same level of tariffs on their steel and aluminum and autos as they do have on yours. What was the thinking behind not going forward with that?
The situation with respect to autos is quite similar. It mirrors largely our
okay, but steel and aluminum does not.
Right. And look, the Prime Minister, I think I saw in the news conference, answered the question that because we believe there is an opportunity in the coming weeks to come to a bilateral deal with the United States that will put us in a better position than we're in this evening with respect to those sectors that they've targeted with these sectoral tariffs. The challenge is, Karina, whether it's steel, aluminum, automobiles, or softwood lumber is adjacent to this conversation, but critical for the Canadian economy. These are areas where we're the most integrated of any other country with the United States in the supply chains. And they have, in the trading agreements they've reached with other countries, not provided relief on these sectoral tariffs. So it is a significant challenge for us. But while the Prime Minister, following his conversation with the President and my conversations with Secretary Lutnick, while there is an opportunity, in our view, to work towards a bilateral agreement, we're going to continue to pursue that. And if we get to a different conclusion, the Prime Minister will make the decisions that would be appropriate then.
Now, obviously, critics.
So there you go, kits and cubs. A little additional information here from the Canadian Minister on U.S. Canada trade, as you saw there, or as you heard there in their response, particularly making a mention a few weeks ago of the executive order that the president signed, which nobody from the Canadian trade team ran to a microphone and podium and said, the United States and Donald Trump absolutely caved, as Carolyn Livet did when we decided that we would take the digital services tax off the table. But the President of the United States expressly signing an executive order stating that the CUSMA deal is something that should be that we should aspire to maintain is a big deal. Is a pretty damn big deal. Now, again, how much his signature is worth on that piece of paper is a whole other discussion. But the fact that it was even affixed is a pretty big deal. And it didn't get the headlines that it deserved. So when people keep on saying, oh, we're giving up stuff and we're getting nothing. Are we getting nothing? Are we really? Or are we just not bragging about the things that we get as good and skilled trade negotiators tend to do? It's a valid question. But there, just wanted to make sure that you weren't hearing the news just from me, that this actually did happen. The minister actually did say it. This thing is real. So again, as the game changes, you change the way you play the game, which is what Canada is doing. We seem to be very good at being nimble and being able to modify strategy and approach on the fly as the situation requires, as opposed to another person in our Canadian political mix who has developed quite an infamous reputation for being someone who has an inability to pivot. And thus, the constantly shifting ground in the Canada-U.S. trade negotiations make it such that he often looks like he's getting caught flat-footed or has the response to yesterday's question today, and is not able to actually meet the moment at any given moment because he's trying to lead from behind, pretty much. So I'm good. I'm good with the fact that we have the current team that we have in place doing the negotiations on our behalf rather than the alternate team. And I'm still giggling my ass off thinking about that interview with Shelley or Shelby Cramp Neumann, that CPC MP that we featured her very disastrous interview, who couldn't answer after being asked 4 times in a row um, one certain question, but seemed to be there to make the case, and only the case, that the government of Canada should include some helpful conservatives with their usually helpful suggestions in the room at the time that this is going on. Fuck no. Thank you for the absolutely atrociously awful idea. We will give that all the consideration that it deserves. Flush, and we will get back to you on that. Uh, don't call us. We'll call you. Don't wait up and don't hold your breath. Okay? Bye, Poodle. Uh, that was a super dumb suggestion on her part. So, yeah, this is where things stand. And after these 5 big days of meetings in Europe and this additional meeting here with Dominic LeBlanc, um, maybe things are starting to move. You can definitely tell that we are moving towards the fall sitting season and the reopening of the House, as we are being teased about news about the budget and news about announcements on ports and all this trade mission to Europe, which may mean that there might be some additional memorandums of understanding or deals or something like that being announced over the next couple of weeks. And this is something that I suggested previously on the show would be my strategy if I was coming back. If the Conservatives are going to flood the zone with BS, then the Team Carney needs to flood the zone in its own way with announcements and things it can point to and moments of progress and these types of things on a daily basis. There needs to be something that is happening on that front to show Canadians that things are moving and that these things are going to have to be layered and tiered. So, for example, as we mentioned, right, announcements on ports and that type of stuff that can happen very quickly, being announced first, and then larger major projects down the line like pipelines and corridors and that type of stuff. And they're probably going to need a tier of announcements somewhere in between those because even though we're talking about approving things fast, you know, approving a pipeline with absolutely no environmental assessment whatsoever is probably not going to fly. So there's going to need to be some kind of one. And even though there won't be a provincial assessment followed by a federal one or vice versa, that they might look at both assessments and try to find a way to cover all the elements in one, or pick a federal one or a provincial one and let that one serve as both, however it is that they're going to do it. There is still going to need to be some type of assessment, and that takes time, right? If we're talking about deals and negotiations, writing those contracts out before you get them to a point where they can be signed, that takes time. So we're hoping that it's not going to take 5 to 7 years as it was taken before, but it's going to take some time. From the moment that Daniel Smith shows up at a table and says, "Hey, I have a proponent for this pipeline," to there actually being a shovel in the ground, I would expect there would at least be probably another year and a half, right? So there needs to be some entry level projects and some mid tier projects that things can be pointed to and announced as those bigger deals are being negotiated and finalized, and equipment is being mobilized to get it on the ground so that the shovels can start doing what they do. But we're going to have to expect from the Conservatives some just non-serious rhetoric about expectations that these are projects that can get started in 150 days with the shovels in the ground, less than 200 after people started talking about diversifying and expanding trade in the way that we have been, which is, of course, completely and totally unrealistic and shows that the Conservatives are not indeed a government in waiting, but a group of unserious people making unserious comments that are completely unhelpful in any way to the general discussion and make us wonder why it is that this party even has a reason for existing other than wanting to win. Because it's not there to do policy, and it's not there to make lives better, and it's not there to contribute to anything positive to any debate. So why are you here? It would be nice if a lot more Canadians start asking the question, why are you here again? Not seeing the value added you bring to the conversation. Sorry. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really love it when you do, especially when you include a little bit of yourself in that, because you are influencers in your own communities. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like us to help you, we can do that because sometimes you are on the go and you don't have time to watch the episode either with the DAMFAM live or on your own time. Sometimes you need to multitask. Well, we've got a solution for you. Thanks to the Ray Girl, if you scan that QR code that has appeared that she has generously made available through her support, or if you go to podpage.com/the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words, when you go there, you will be able to find the audio cast version of our show. It's all audio, no visual. So therefore, if you've got things to do today and you're busy, if you download us, we come directly to your favorite podcast feed. You pop us in your ears and take us with you. We're portable. Who knew? So lightweight and very aerodynamic as well. We won't slow you down, kids and cubs, unless our banter is just so interesting that you need to stop dead in your tracks and listen to everything that we have to say. Then we might slow you down a little. But other than that, you can just listen to us and keep on going. So thank you for doing that. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, you can do that by making your way down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where Kits, Cassie, and Elaine are welcoming you with open arms, saying, hey, come over here, right this way. The exits are that way, and the bathrooms are that way. Here's your fresh beverage. And while you're here, if you would like to smash with our buttons, we would be very grateful. Like, share, and subscribe. When you give them a little click, it helps us with the algorithm. And I think we are now at 21,700. So thank you so much, kids and cubs, for joining in such great numbers. And let's keep the channel growing. And hopefully more and more of you will stop in for the conversations as the days and months go by here at the Beaver Lodge. We are so glad to have you. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, we could definitely use your help with the costs that we incur to bring this show to you. We basically are self-financed other than tips from you and revenue that we are generating from having enough subscribers on YouTube. So we get some advertising dollars. But other than that, those are our main sources of funding. So if it weren't for you, we would not be able to keep on doing what it is that we do. So if you like our content and you would like to encourage us to do more, we would be grateful for your support. And you can do that via a contribution to the Emergency Hydration Fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where every day we work very hard to fight the scourge that is dry beaver. terrible thing for dry beaver. And you can help with that by making a contribution to the Hydration Fund by dropping a few loonies or toonies into our tip jar that you can find at our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. Or if you're watching, that QR code that just appeared, you can scan it and it will bring you right there. And we thank you for your generous donation. Now, if you are buying Canadian kits and cubs, we have a setup for you to donate to us that respects that. You use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And when you do that, you can do a direct bank to bank transfer. So from your Canadian bank to our Canadian bank, which keeps the transaction 100% Canadian, which is a win. It bypasses the US CE tech bros from PayPal and all those other things that will take a cut of whatever donation that you make, even if you make a donation through here, through Super Chat here on Google, YouTube platform, if you're watching live. Right? If there's a portion of that that gets taken, although maybe I'm told that that's not the case, but if there is, that too does not go to the CE Tech Pros, who then take a portion of that and offer it to Donald Trump, who wants to annex us or break us to own us, as tribute. So maybe we don't want to help them out that way. So the direct email to email transfer helps with that way. And the third way that you win, or at least that we win, is that when you give us a direct to direct bank transfer rather than going through the USCE Tech Pros, there's no middleman to take a cut, which means we get 100% of your donation, and more of your money goes to support the activities and the news gathering and curation activities here at the Beaver Lodge, as well as ensuring that your favorite beaver is well stocked with hot chocolate. It's water today in the cup, but trust me, there'll be some hot chocolate in my future today. Absolutely, for sure. Got to maintain these levels. Get some cups. So thank you for your generous contributions. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, we have some by-election results for you. Kids and cubs, there was the by-election in Spruce Woods yesterday, and it seems that the progressive conservatives in Manitoba managed to hang on to the seat, but barely. According to CBC News here, Manitoba PC candidate Colleen Robbins has won Tuesday's provincial by-election in the southwestern constituency of Spruce Woods, allowing the opposition Progressive Conservatives to keep a seat they've held since 2011. In a tight race, Robbins' NDP candidate Ray Bartlett lost. They lost by 70 votes, 2,805 for Robbins to Bartlett's 2,735, with all polls reporting as of about 9:30 p.m. Liberal candidate Stephen Reed came in a distant third with 444 votes, but some people are saying that he ended up splitting the vote. Quote, "Tonight I stand before you filled with gratitude and humility," Robbins told supporters in Souris, Manitoba. "The victory is not mine alone, it belongs to all of us. The close result may have come as a surprise, given that the PCs have garnered between 61 and 73% of the vote in the constituency during 4 general elections since 2011. Spruce Woods had been without an elected provincial representative since March, when former PC MLA Grant Jackson resigned to make a successful run to become the Conservative MP for Brandon Souris. The mostly rural constituency, which encompasses the north side of Brandon, 9 rural municipalities surrounding the city, and the communities of Souris, Glenborough, Rivers, Wawanesa, and Oak Lake, had only elected PC MLA since being created in 2011. Robbins, a former nurse and PC party official, issued 2 apologies last week, one for old social media comments after residential schools and unions, and the other for falsely asserting at a debate that gender-affirming surgery is being conducted on minors in Manitoba. The NDP candidate, former real estate agent Ray Bartlett, struggled to defend his party's healthcare record at the same debate. The governing New Democrats also faced a PC claim that Premier Wab Kinew had violated election blackout rules by using his Instagram account to repeat a Bartlett promise to repair a section of Highway 2. The by-election took place only weeks before the deadline imposed by provincial legislation governing vacant seats. Kinew had said in July he wanted to take the time to ensure his party would be competitive in a traditionally conservative constituency, opining that, quote, "there are no freebies for the progressive conservative opposition." The NDP government announced or re-announced at least $334 million worth of funding for Western Manitoba during the months leading up to the by-election call. Quote, The commitments, the conversations that we had, we're going to make good on them, and we're going to keep true to our word, Canoe told supporters alongside Berthelette in Brandon, Manitoba on Tuesday night. In her victory speech, Robbins said she will work for all constituents in Spruce Woods, whether they voted for her or not. Quote, I promise to be a representative that listens, that works hard every single day, and who never forgets this role is about service and not power. To those that did not support me, I want you to know that my door is open to you all. Speaking to reporters afterwards, Robbins called the close race nerve-wracking for her and for her family and supporters. But a win is a win, she said, as she thanked voters for putting their faith in her. It was a sentiment echoed by PC leader Obi Khan, who joined Robbins and her supporters in Souris on Tuesday evening. A win is a win, and we'll take it, Khan told reporters, and we'll work on that, and we'll get better every day, and we'll continue to grow the party. In his concession speech, Berthelette said his narrow loss shows that the NDP is making inroads in areas that have long been PC strongholds. Quote, we came so close. 70 votes is just amazing, he said. When we started this, we were 3,000 down, and I was saying, yeah, maybe 1,500, I'll be happy. But it started steamrolling and steamrolling and steamrolling, and with the effort of the team, because it's all about a team, our premier support, it was just unbelievable. Berthelette thanked the voters of Spruce Woods, including the many who came out for the first time and voted for me and the NDP. Kelly Saunders, an associate professor of political science at Brandon University, says she sees Tuesday's result as a win for the governing party. Quote, I think this is clearly a win for the NDP, even though they technically did not manage to flip the seat, but certainly significantly closed the vote spread between themselves and the PCs, she told CBC News in an interview Tuesday night. Saunders said the result reflects the popularity of Canoe and the weakness of the PCs. She said Robbins having to walk back some of her previous comments during the campaign likely caught the attention of some voters. Quote, I think it just reminded voters yet again of some of the things that the PCs would probably like voters to forget from the last election. Saunders said Reid, the Liberal candidate, ran a strong race and likely split the vote. Quote, it was about just over 400 votes that he got, she said. When you factor in only a 70 vote for spread between the PCs and NDP, potentially that's where a lot of anti-PC vote might have gone, not really happy voting NDP, not really comfortable or ready to make that leap, but felt a little more comfortable parking their vote with the Liberals, end quote. So there you go, by-elections results for you. Also, because democracy is something that you do if you happen to be living in Alberta, the good folks from forever-canadian.ca, that's the web address, are out canvassing, looking for signatures, donations, volunteers, all of that kind of stuff. Remember, you need to sign in person. You cannot do this online because all signatures need to be witnessed, and about 294,000 of them minimum are needed, probably more, to stop Danny from any shenanigans that she would like to try in order to invalidate some of those signatures. So please, if you are looking for some pop-up sites, forever-canadian.ca is the website you go to. Find out where the events will be, show up, make it fun, bring some friends with you, and affix your signature on that petition to make sure that the referendum question that does go forward and the Citizens Initiative is the one about keeping Alberta as part of the Canadian family. Okay, kits and cubs. Words of wisdom. Let's see. Words of wisdom. Do I have any wisdom for you today? I am going to say, kits and cubs, when you are feeling a little low on energy, treating yourself to a yummy homemade smoothie often is good. It's good to get a little fruit in you. There might be a double entendre there. No, but yes, if you're feeling a little low, have a snack, a little low energy, and have a healthy snack that is good for you. And sometimes that might just be the little pick-me-up that you need. Could be a tough world out there, kids. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, at the count of 3, if I may humbly request that all together you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. In 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow. Such harmony, such unison. How can I refuse? I can't. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Oh, with Cubs, we have a little bit of news about Canadians who make us proud. Yesterday at the U.S. Open, Siem and Denis Shapovalov won their first round matches. This is good for both of them because both of them have been struggling a little bit this year. So it was nice to see some first round wins for the two. That is very positive. Of the 6 Canadians who entered the first round in singles, 4 have advanced to the second round. So we have Leila Annie Fernandez for the women, still in the draw. And we have all 3 men in the singles draw, Gabriel Diallo, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and Denis Shapovalov. All 3 of them seeded among the top 32, advancing to the second round. And hopefully they can keep that going. Of course, we will soon have doubles play entering the mix at the tournament. And that will be interesting to add to the list. Leila Annie Fernandez is playing today against a player called Jacquemot from France. Hopefully that will be an opportunity for her to advance another round here. And then I believe if she does that, she might potentially be facing Arina Sabalenka, who is the tournament's number 1. So like I said, the draw gods being slightly unkind to Canadians here at the U.S. Open. First of all, placing Fernandez against Canadian Rebecca Marino in the first round, and then lined up for a match with a potential world number 1, Arina Sabalenka, in the third round. When you make it to a Grand Slam and then you get the draw, and you see that as being the draw, it's the type of thing that sometimes makes people curse. It's just like, sometimes it's just one little, fuck. But it does, trust me, because you're when you're a seeded player, you would like to hope to at least get to the 4th round and maybe have an upset somewhere in the 3rd round. But when you line up against the world number 1 in the 3rd round, it's like, Dan, okay. Most likely it will be an opportunity to play on the main show court and get a lot of TV time. And maybe if I play well, earn a couple of new fans. But I think we have an idea how this is going to go. But you always play to win. Even if the numbers on paper say you don't have a chance, you always play to win. Because when you do that, sometimes you do. Hey, some belated wisdom there for you kits and cubs. Who knew? I had more wisdom than I believed. That happens sometimes, kids and cubs. That does happen sometimes. In about Canadians who make us kids and cubs. I don't know where the news went to. I'm sorry. It just kind of disappeared on me. But hopefully I will find it. There we go. There it is. Brianna Hennessy, who we've talked about before, was at the Para Canoe World Championships, and she won a silver medal in her race. So congratulations to her. And Also, in lacrosse, at the World Lacrosse Men's Under 20 Championships, Canada won its first ever gold medal, defeating the U.S. With a 6-5 victory, described as a stunning triumph. Because the United States, as you mentioned, has basically had a stranglehold on that title and therefore was expecting to win it. So there you go. More Canadians who make us proud, who we like to celebrate. And with that, kits and cubs, that is the end for me today. So I'm going to say amour et bisous. Mhm. And with that, I am gone, just like magic. Poof.